Hello, ladies and gentle dudes. I'm coming to you by postcard. How's it doing? Anyway, I'm sharing a very interesting book I'm reading. I can't put it down. I'm almost halfway through it. It doesn't have page numbers, so I don't know what page I'm on. But it's about yay thick, so I'm about halfway into it. Anyway, the book is supposedly written by the guy who supposedly replaced Paul McCartney in 1966. I'm going to research it more, but so far it seems very convincing. So I have to go dig deeper into the rabbit hole. Whoops, my hat's on sideways here. Okay, but anyway, this guy, Billy's Back. It's called Billy's Back. It is actually encoded by Thomas E. Harriet. I can't pronounce his name, but he calls himself the encoder, not the author. So it's actually selections from the book that set world records, whatever that means. It says world record here, but it doesn't say what world record. It's the Memoir of Billy Shears. So he took out some of the chapters because it's a lot longer book, and he goes through the chapters. I'll tell you which ones I've read and a little bit about them. I'm going to go more deeply into this, and I'm going to reread it again, and I'm going to do some thorough study of this, because if this is not one of the coolest conspiracy theory books I've ever seen, it's up there with them. So the first chapter is called Dreams of Paul. So it talks about Paul McCartney had a bunch of dreams. I guess I don't know exact when, but before he supposedly died on September 11th. I keep fucking with my hat. It's like a green beret now. Anyway, he had dreams about he was going to die. So he kept telling everyone he needs a replacement because he's going to die, and he was telling his family and everyone. And finally, he even had a look-alike contest, and all the people that did the look-alike contest he didn't really like. But then they found this guy who was named Pepper, Billy Pepper, otherwise known as Billy Shears, otherwise known as Billy Shepherd. And he was in a band. He was in many bands. And his stage name in the band was Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots. And so the song Sgt Pepper's, he was also nicknamed Sgt Pepper. And so in the song Sgt Pepper, which is right after supposedly the next album after the Revolver, the reason they called it Revolver is they were revolving from what they called the second stage in this, what they call in this book anyway, the second stage of the Beatles into the third stage, which was when they replaced Paul McCartney with this guy. So anyway, that's the first chapter, is about the dreams he has about he's going to die. And then the next one is, what is it? Stuart was the first martyr. It talks about their first drummer, Stu, who died of a brain hemorrhage right after he left the Beatles, right before they got really famous. And they had another drummer, and then the management of the first record they made said they didn't like that drummer, so they put in a Ringo. Okay. The next chapter is called Paul Worked It Out. Paul's Girls is the fourth chapter, and then Drive My Car Backwards. I'm not going to go into each chapter totally thoroughly. The one that they left out is chapter 6, Let It Be, and he kind of hints to why he left it out, and it's going to be, you have to actually go to reading the Memoirs of Billy Shears to find that chapter. But the cool thing about this version of the memoirs is each page has encodings, which supposedly in the real Memoir of Billy Shears, it doesn't have them highlighted, so you can't really see, and he finds them. So as for an example here, throughout the book there's all these other messages. You can't see with this light on. It's too bright, that's why. Okay. That's way too bright. Okay. Let's try to go down a little. You can't see. Oh, you can a little bit here. So throughout the book, he has all these little highlighted parts where if you read down, it actually gives a totally different message, or a subcurrent message to the actual chapter, which kind of contradicts a lot of what it said, to kind of give you, like, are you sure you know what he's really saying? So for example, this one, it says, from needing Linda, I used the driving image to see my severe loneliness driving me sad. But the entire song is on driving in the rain. Then, of course, there is a car with a babe who has passed away. So he's talking about songs that he wrote in the Peppercorn days, and then songs he wrote later under the name McCartney. And he has similar lyrics in a lot of these ones and similar messages. So it would be kind of a weird coincidence that a guy who wasn't in the band supposedly, and then became in the and he says he became part of the band. Could you guys read it better like that? Yeah, when I put the light away. No, it's too bright. Okay, anyway. I'll bring that light back down. Whoa, very bright. Okay, so anyway, there's so much, it goes so deep, I'm going to have to make more videos of this and more explanation of each chapter, but let me just try to go by memory. He's talking about the song, so many, Baby If You Drive My Car, Yes I'm Gonna Be a Star, Baby I Love You. Actually, there's so many songs that they reference in here and the lyrics to what they really meant and what you thought they meant. And if you go back and listen to some of the lyrics, they actually overdubbed the actual words that they wanted, but the first time they ever put lyrics on an album was a Beatles album called Sgt. Pepper, where they explained why Paul died and how he died. But they didn't want to put it out there because they wanted to subconsciously put it out there just because they didn't want to say they ever lied about it. According to the author of this book, whoever that is, if it's really Billy Shears or it's something else, I don't know. But anyway, okay, so let's go into some of the songs. It talks about the whole. Let's see some of the other chapters if I can that'll kind of just naming the chapter will kind of remind me some of the things I read, because I read it very fast, and I want to go back and read this again because it's a really good book. Okay, so one of the where's the chapters? Okay, here we are. Burn a Poor Young Country Boy. So this guy who became Paul McCartney in '66, according to this book, was a country boy. He wasn't from Liverpool. He had to fake the Liverpool accent. But he was in many bands where he always used fake names. So Billy Shears actually isn't his real name, but that was his name in one of the bands that he was before he became part of the Beatles. So he used that in the Sgt. Pepper to talk about who he is. But he doesn't say yet who he is, and so far what I've got to. He says, I'm a shepherd. Yes. And shepherd, if you take out 2 letters, spells shears. Spells shear. What's a shear? A shepherd uses a shear to trim the hair on a ram. And supposedly one of his solo albums, I haven't researched so much on Paul McCartney after leaving the Beatles. I wasn't that much into his stuff. I should get more into it after reading this. But anyway, or the new Paul McCartney. Some people call him Fall McCartney. Some people call him other names, because if you notice, a lot of people noticed from '66, the last Revolver album that the real Paul McCartney was on, and supposedly the new Paul McCartney. The new Paul McCartney's face was long. The old Paul McCartney's face was very round, kind of like a Charlie Brown almost. Also, I haven't got fully into the bass part because Paul McCartney played the bass left-handed. This guy apparently learned how to play left-handed. He was also a drummer. He played some other brass instruments. He arranged orchestra stuff. He was much more amazing musician, but he wasn't really famous than Paul McCartney was, which is why he was able to take, according to this author, the Beatles into a totally new revolution with the album right after supposedly the real Paul McCartney died, which is the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And the reason they call it Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and on the cover, he gives about 100 different reasons why the cover was exactly the way it was. It was actually supposed to be a funeral for Paul McCartney. And there's messages in there. If you take a mirror and you put a mirror up to the album at a certain part of the drum head, I haven't done it yet, it's supposed to give you the date exactly when he died, which in the British way of writing dates, it says 11/9/1966. But it also some people thought that was November 9th, but it's not. In the British, it's 9/11, just like the false flag operation date. Okay. And he ties a lot of the stuff that's going on in America with what was going on with the Beatles. MK Ultra was using the Beatles to promote LSD. And it's really very interesting. Let me see if I... Okay. So on the cover, supposedly when you put a mirror there, I haven't done it yet, and I don't have the album. I have to go print it out, and then I have to do it with the mirror and everything. He said you can do it with the CD case now, with an actual CD that reflects, because their CD reflects, but that wasn't... You had to do it with a mirror back in the days. And I guess you put it halfway through the drum, and then it makes the... It says I, or 1 in Roman noodles, 1, IX, which is 9. The I1 is 11. One of them spelled out 1, and one of them's the Roman numeral 1. And then it says he, and it has a pointer, and it points right to the new Paul McCartney. Die. So he dies. And also, he says this message was also in 1 and 1 and 1 is 3. Got to be good looking because he's so hard to see. So almost all these lyrics relate to the fact that Paul McCartney is not Paul McCartney, and it has to be, you have to be really good looking to notice. His face is much longer. And why does he say 1 and 1 and 1 is 3? That's John Lennon's lyrics. And I forget the name of the song. 1 and 1 and 1 is 3. Got to be good looking. It's so hard to see. Come together. Come together. Okay, I couldn't think of the name. But anyways, in Come Together, he's saying 1 and 1 and 1 is 3. What that means is there's only really 3 Beatles. And this other guy, who was the almost look-alike, much more talented, much better songwriter, but wasn't yet famous until he became part of the Beatles. And he also made his other acts that he was doing at the same time become more famous because he had a lot more money to put into them after he was inherited much of the wealth of Paul McCartney. So he says the reason why they did this is because at this time, I mean, if you look at the Beatles, they were so handled by their handlers. And the British invasion was used to really push a lot of stuff around the world with the Beatles' fame against really them knowing about what was being done most of the time. This new guy who came in, Billy Shears or Billy Shepherd or Willie, Slick Willie, whatever you want to call him, but that's not his, those are all of his stage names, who became the new Paul McCartney. He was much more organized in working with the band to create really what they needed to create. But he was never into the drugs as much as the other ones. So he kind of helped them get out of the drug scene because he knew that they were being controlled by dark forces to promote Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco as a place where the CIA used the funneling of these drugs to try to control the teenagers. And they also hired a convict, Manson, which they haven't yet got into that on this book. I think it goes into this because it goes a lot into this dark secrets that whether this story is actually true or not. He says, I write it as a novel. And he says, the reason I write it as a novel, because I haven't died yet, and it can't be fully revealed until I die, the current Paul McCartney. But he says some things here, which I'll just try to find the quotes that I underlined that are really good. Okay, he says, all of the enormous negative consequences for me breaking the non-disclosure agreement are worse than ridiculous. Without going into it, there is no way I would possibly break that agreement. That is exactly why I am cautious to preserve the novel status of this revealing book. In fiction, such as a song, poem, and novel, I can say anything. That does not violate the agreement. But in straight communications, such as in an interview or on a witness stand, I am obliged to be silent about having any knowledge of Paul's death. So he says the reason he wrote this as a novel is because he's under a disclosure agreement when he joined the band, that he can't disclose all this agreement. So basically, Paul according to the point of view of this book, Paul believed he was going to die, so he found a replacement. And he believed that when he died, because he was having all these prophetic dreams, that he would be able to channel to this new writer and still be part of the band and still have his legacy go on and his family go on. So that's why he didn't want anybody to know he was going to die. But he didn't know exactly how he was going to die, but he had all these messages that were happening. And according to the chapter where he actually dies on September 11th, he was leaving the studio, and I guess John Lennon was doing a movie. This is 66 September, a movie in France, I think it was. So only Paul McCartney and one other Beatles were in the studio, and this was right after they finished the Revolver tour. And he says, okay, we're going to make a new CD, our new album at the time, and we're going to just bam, bam, bam. I need you to do 10 songs. I need John to do 10 songs. But John Lennon and Paul McCartney always wrote together, but this time the producer was saying, no, you're going to write your songs, and John's going to write his songs. He's in another country right now doing this play. So you're going to start by yourself, because they've always were a double team, and he was kind of frustrated by this. I never written songs by myself. So he stormed out of the place, he slammed the door, and he left. And that was the night supposedly he died. I believe that's going from memory, so I'm going to have to go back and reread it again. But anyway, on this night, supposedly he picked up a hitchhiker who was really hot. And as a Beatles, he couldn't really go out on the street and meet girls because he would get mauled by people. All the Beatles would at that time, 66, because of the Beatlemania. So, but he picked up this really hot hitchhiker, supposedly, who was going to wherever he was. She was going far away from her hometown area. But he kept checking her out the whole time, and she kept going, "You're really the Beatles guy?" So she was searching through the radio dials trying to find a Beatles song. So she says, sing, because she was still kind of like blown away that, wait a second, a Beatles is picking me up as a hitchhiker on the street. It was unbelievable to her too. Well, this is all from piecing back what possibly happened, because no one knows exactly what happened, because they both were found dead. Supposedly he went through a red light and a truck crashed into him because they believe because he was checking out this girl the whole time, and he was distracted by this hot girl in his car. So when they wrote the song, what's the song about? Oh, Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. That song, actually, hidden message of that song, I'll try to go into all the songs that have hidden messages. Almost every song after that had hidden message about the death. That song, supposedly, she's having fun. She's going away to have fun, because this daughter from a nice family was leaving hitchhiking to go somewhere else, because she was going to go have fun. But she left home because she never came back. She died. And they found out, they died September 11th, but they didn't verify the death of the body until after midnight of the next day, the September 11th, September 12th. And so 5 o'clock at that time, what the song says, is when they actually contacted that family of the daughter who died. They identified her as the dead person. So there's some other messages in that song about the death. And every other song and every other album after that really goes into this. It's really a lot of information, so I can't really remember it all in one reading, so I'm going to have to go back and forth making videos on this. But I'm going to try to just look at some of the things I've underlined. See if there's anything I want to say about it. God, there's just so much. Okay, Lovely Rita Mita Mater also has a lot of references to this scene. I also found some encodings in this that the guy didn't find, which I think are really beautiful too. They make secret messages going down the page that you don't normally see unless you highlight them. Okay, I can't find all my notes. That's an area. So he says, Drive My Car has a bunch of secret references to this. What other ones? He has a Masonic checkmate picture that John drew, and he bought this from John Lennon. Can you see it? Here we go. You can see this one. He bought this version of it for an illegally grown plant. He doesn't say what it is. I'm assuming it's marijuana. And a pie that he was going to give to John anyway. But John drew this hanging out at his house one day. Hanging out at actually Paul's house, which this guy moved into Paul's house. He was in collusion with the family. Paul McCartney's brother became his good friend and helped him out getting used to being the new Paul McCartney. So in this, it has a lot of references to a lot of the songs and what they actually mean. But it shows the four bandmates playing a bass guitar, which is the left guitar bass string. There's also some other bass strings on the album. I guess it's on the album cover. Probably Sgt Pepper, where the fourth one of the strings is broken. That's to show that also that the fourth member of the band is gone. So in this, there's love. And on one of the albums, and I forget which one it is now, they're all trying to spell love. I guess they're spelling love with their hands or something like that, or they're doing hand signals. But Paul McCartney is supposed to do the O, but he's turned around doing it. And I guess that's this picture. Supposedly, I have to reread this all because there's so much facts drilled into my brain. But there's so much symbolism to the Masonic. This guy, apparently, his uncle, the reason he got into the Beatles and they found him is because his uncle was high up in the Masonic order, and he was also a little lower level Masonic person. So, of course, the Masons wanted to be part of controlling the Beatles, too, and keeping them in control, because there was a big risk that if Paul McCartney died, that they would be either break up or their fame would be lost, because sometimes you lose one member of a band, the fame goes down the hill. So there was many reasons for not making it public, although they made so many references to it in all their albums after that, and we'll get more into that in future videos. I think that's all about I can remember right now. I'm going to just look through some of the chapters here, envisioning. Okay, so one of the chapters called Playing with the Bonzos was one of his bands before he got picked up. I was a session musician, so he was a really good session musician. He was much more talented musician than most of the Beatles were at the time, and he really took their music to a higher level. Let's see. The one and only Billy Shears rams on. Okay, I don't want to get into that chapter yet. I'm going to talk about that later because there's so much to talk about. So, on one of the benefit of Mr. Kite, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, it says late of Pablo, and late of Pablo means the late Paul, the dead Paul. Before Pepper's, okay, it talks about the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album was the first album they actually put the lyrics in an album. It was never, no other band ever put lyrics in an album until Sgt. Pepper's, and then everyone else copied after that. They actually put it, I believe, on the cover. And so he says, the reason we were doing that is to put our pictures behind the lyrics, means we stand behind the lyrics, but we overdubbed the words we really wanted to use. So if you read the lyrics, you can't hear the other overdubbing sound, but if you know what he really was saying and you listen again, you'll hear many words that they didn't say. So it says nobody was really sure if he was from the House of Lords. If you listen to that again and you know it says the House of Paul. So it's a reference to nobody was really sure if this guy, Billy Shears, was from the House of Lords, was from the House of Paul, because they said Paul. They also, in Fixing the Hole, the whole message in Fixing the Hole was fixing the hole of the guy who died, which was Paul McCartney. And in it he says, silly people standing there, disagree and never win, wonder why they don't get past my door. But if you listen to it again, he says silly Beatles. So they overdubbed people and Beatles together. So one ear you'll hear a little Beatles and one ear you'll hear a little, but if you read the lyrics, that's why they put the lyrics there. So you're confused in what you really heard, because you're always going to believe what you actually read, not what you actually heard. That's a subconscious programming, but they at least were programming you to know the truth, so when it finally does get out, you wouldn't be so shocked. So there's so many other messages in all these songs. Okay, so he blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. They say that's a reference to the fact that he ran a red light and he blew his mind out because he a car hit him and he actually got decapitated. The only way they can identify him was they knew the car license plate because he was so just totally destroyed, and the car actually caught on fire, so he was burned too, but he got decapitated. And one other thing is the real Paul McCartney was actually getting almost bald, and he would always put his hair down forward so you couldn't see that. But the new Paul McCartney wasn't. So that's just one of many things. You can tell it's not the same guy according to this author. And I'm not yet taking a point of view on which is right, but there's so much revealing stuff in this book that it's kind of hard to... Okay, so on one of the other albums it says OPD, which just like in the US, it's a DOA, dead on arrival. They have to actually pronounce someone dead, and they call it officially pronounced dead, OPD. And I guess that's written somewhere on one of the drum heads or something on the Sgt Pepper inside or outside. But the OPD, officially pronounced dead, is also another secret encoding, which we'll try to find it here. What was it? There's so many. Okay, I'm going to have to come back. I'm going to make more notes here, and I'm going to write more stuff. Come back with another video, and I'm going to try to print out some stuff of all this albums that they're talking about and all the lyrics. I got it all down. But anyway, I just wanted to recommend this book. If you're into conspiracy theories, this is a really cool one. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it sure seems pretty freaking amazing if it isn't true. Okay, I'll be back with you at this. Billy's back. Okay, read the book.